everyone. This is Ubuntu, a global dialogue, and I'm excited to talk about this topic on building thriving families. I think it's a very important topic for us to discuss because we cannot really educate a society on a shaky foundation. I believe that the family provides the structure for any society to do anything. And in the next few weeks, we're going to be talking more about relationships and family building. How do we get it right? You know, there's an African adage that says a family, when looked at from the outside, is like a dense forest. But when looked upon from within, you see the single individual trees. A dense forest from outside, individual trees when looked at from inside. I think it's a very powerful proverb, African proverb, which means from the outside, the family, according to the African way of reasoning, is a unit. It operates as one. It's dense, it's together, but it's also massive. It's like a forest, it's massive. So which is sort of different from the idea that the family is always has to be nuclear, mother, father, and children. In the African concept, is beyond mother, father, children. You include uncles, aunts, and cousins, and many others. So it's a dense forest. But it doesn't mean that people lose their individuality. That is why what we do inside is very important. So you still see and retain the individuality of every member of the family. Every member is taken care of. That's important. So we're going to be talking about this today. So I have with me Madam Nwabweze, a woman I have come to really admire so much, and we'll get to hear more about her and her story during this session. I also have Dr. Paul Easterling and Dr. Professor Siri McDougall. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let me start with Madam Nwabweze. In your opinion, what does it mean for a family to be strong? What does a thriving family represent or look like to you?
Thank you very much indeed. And good afternoon, everyone. It's a glorious afternoon here in the middle of England. Family, for me, is this. It's almost the reason for being. I am Igbo by nationality. Nigeria is full of many nationalities, a bit like the United Kingdom, where you have the English, you have the Welsh, you have the Scots, you have the Irish. There are many nationalities in Nigeria, and I am Igbo. And family means everything to us as Igbo people. We have Omunna, which is what Professor Kanu just described. Omunna is your extended family. And that extended family is intergenerational. So it's horizontal and it is vertical. There's another expression we have in my language, which is Igbo. Onye ahala nwanne ya. One never leaves a brother or sister, which actually means that we are responsible for each other. I'm also a Christian, so it all falls into line. If you are familiar with Christian teachings and the books of the Bible, we started out as a family, the children of Adam and Eve, our first parents, got into trouble. And then we believe that we've been redeemed by the second Adam, who is part of a unit, a Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So family is so intrinsic to any advances that we have made as Homo sapiens. If you think about it, we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors who were able to pass down their genes to us, making each of us unique and special. And that, to my mind, that continuity makes it gives me a strong sense of who I am, what I am here for, and what value every human being has. Because ultimately, we are all part of the same human family. It is said that we are all 5 steps away from being related. And I actually believe that we are one human race. One. All these divisions have been created because of all kinds of reasons. The biggest one being an economic reason, when a group of us decide out of their avarice to create categories of humanity in order to make a profit from those categorizations, which are completely a false construct. So I'll just stop there because this is such a huge topic, and I would like to hear what other people would want to say at this juncture.
Thank you, Madam Wangweze. Let's go to Professor Siri McDougall.
And the question is the same, or is the?
Yes, please.
And that's
yes.
What?
Yes. What is to you? So, in your mind, what is a strong thriving family?
Yeah. I think that a strong family is one where the bonds or those relationships are defined by respect and affirmation and nurturing. And I think that those are the things that make a family strong, essentially. But also, I mean, the things that were already mentioned, that the role that these other factors have an effect on our ability to make those relationships or those bonds as strong as they could be. But I mean, it's the original or the foundational, the oldest human organization, is the family. So for us, I mean, it's a gauge that we can use to a litmus test for the strength of our relationships as nations, or as African people.
Thank you. Dr. Easterling, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, family is simply a microcosm of society. So what we do in our families is often reflected in the larger society. So it is it's an important element of human of human growth and human evolution. And so, or it's important, it's key that is that we nurture our families and grow from within, and whatever we put into our families, we also bring out into the larger society.
Let's dig in now. Are we supposed to expect gendered roles in families? Are more successful families those ones that have clear gender roles? And I want us to tackle this because we live in an age of, the Me Too movement, the feminine movement, women empowerment, and some argue that it's affecting in a negative way the family unit. Some others argue that is not, it's actually helping when, in fact, when you raise the floor of the society by empowering women, everyone does better, children do better, right? So I guess it's a very loaded question I'm asking here, and I'd like for you all to unpack as much as you can. What should we expect? Should we have gendered roles within families? And is that the way to success? I'll go to Madam Mwabweze.
That's really quite an interesting question. Again, I'm going to use my background. I'm Igbo. And before the coming of the white human to my part of the world, Igbo women owned land, worked on their land, made investments, and were independent. They worked in collaboration with the men. The system in that the British brought into Nigeria, a system of indirect rule, where they appointed warrant chiefs who were actually their agents for collecting taxation from people. Now, it was the women, the Igbo women of Nigeria in 1929 that protested against colonial taxation. The men did not have the courage to stand up to the British colonialists. It was the women, unlettered women who had not been to get the education that the white people brought, but they could recognize something that was unfair, something that was unjust, and they protested. Many of them lost their lives. So I don't understand what is meant by a woman not being her whole self, offering everything that she can within the family unit in order that that family flourishes. So insofar as gender roles are concerned, there are definite roles that a man plays, a woman plays, within a heterosexual family. And it really depends on the two individuals. The nuclear family is quintessentially a partnership, and you sort of work out how to engage in that partnership for the best outcome for everybody within that nuclear unit.
Thank you, Madam Mwaweze. Let's go to Professor Cyril McDougall. Gender roles. Is it important that we have gender roles? And I'm asking this question because you are a scholar and a researcher of Black men. You study Black men in particular. So meaning that there's something about men that you've identified that needs to be addressed, which is why you're studying it. Should we highlight that within the family context?
I mean, I think this is something that people have always done to seek complementarity in gender roles, and I think that I mean, there's such a range of some that are rigidly defined to very flexible, particularly in the Black family. In the U.S. context, there's always been a great deal of gender role flexibility, which has helped to sustain and strengthen the Black family. And that's a part of what creates a base of nurturance and support for children in those families, that they get that balance and complementarity from whomever it may be in the household or in the family. You know, sometimes it manifests with mothers who are sometimes more strict with their daughters and more nurturing with their sons, and then fathers who may step in and be quite the opposite, you know, and creating that complementarity of support. But I think it's important to have consensual and agreed upon complementary roles in as far as gender, and allowing people first and foremost to be able to define their gender roles, whatever they may be, and to in a consensual way complement one another. So I think that the sameness in terms of gender, I mean, can be a bit of a problem, like equating sameness with equity. But complementarity, I think, is the key. Without, I mean, and you can do that without kind of like diminishing one gender to uplift another. I think, you know, that's the problem. I think that's just a formula for inciting unnecessary back and forth arguments.
Let's go to Dr. E, if you have something to chime in over there.
Yeah, I believe gender roles should be more fluid than static. I believe that when we get into static gender roles, something that's locked, that can be quite problematic because it doesn't allow for growth. And I'll take my own personal family here. I do most of the cooking and cleaning and child rearing around the house. I do most of it, and I'm the man. So traditionally, especially according to European models, that I'm not supposed to be doing that. I'm not supposed to be adept at that. But I do it here very easily. And our children thrive because of it. So I think having a static or locked idea on what gender is supposed to be could be extremely problematic. So we should be more fluid in our understanding of what our family roles should be.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Dr. E. You know, some men who are listening to us will say, well, good for you, but that is not the mean. That is not the general expectation, right? And of course, I love the fact that Madam Mwabeze said earlier, it's important that there is a dialogue and a meeting of the minds. You work these things out depending on your situation. I mean, that is very important. You have to look at your situation. When a man meets a woman, you need to have discussions. Okay, this is how I operate. This is how you operate. How can we make sure we work together? If I may borrow the words of Professor McDougall, how do we complement each other? I think it's important we have this discussion in a nuanced manner. However, we still need to have a broader discussion. It's okay, yes, we understand that people are different and we need to discuss how we can work out our issues and our differences and our similarities. But generally speaking, what is the role of men? What is the role of women? That question, I still want to ask that. I want to rephrase that question. Is there a role of a man in a family? Generally speaking, is there a role of a woman in a family? Professor McDougall, go ahead. I see you musing over there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to resist a little bit a little bit. I mean, I can answer the question. I mean, generally speaking, that the male role is associated with the providing and protecting kind of a role. But I also want to say that you sit fathers down and you talk to them about what they believe their role to be, and you will hear much more than provide and protect. If you give them the opportunity to speak without giving them the meaning first, you will hear them utter the words nurturing, love, support. The provider protector, yes, I understand that how ubiquitous that is associated with what it means to be a father. But when you take a look a little bit close, I think you find that fathers tend to be a lot more complex than that.
Ma'am, what was it?
It's a very interesting question. And then I am in my 60s, and I was brought up in a very patriarchal situation. Indeed, my uncle keeps on saying to me and my cousins that, well, you girls might be doing all kinds of things, but you must remember that we are a patriarchy here. And this is my uncle, who is a professor. He's not having any of it. Says, yes, we think you girls are wonderful, but we are the men. So traditionally, I am used to men taking the lead. A man has to provide, he has to protect. He is the standard bearer. He is the brand of the family. And he is the umbrella that protects everyone. Now, this is Igbo culture, very patriarchal. However, within that, women are accorded respect. There is an understanding of the role that the women play. We are expected to be nurturers and carers, to look after the children, to make provision for everybody, to be to be the caring. However, amongst the Igbo, a woman is also expected to be industrious and hardworking and financially independent. So it's very interesting, and I find that in choosing a husband, invariably one looks to see those qualities that one is used to from the male, the dominant male in one's family, the father. Things are a little different for my daughter's generation. They are entirely different, and there's more equality in the way they negotiate roles. And I mean, I've never earned more than my husband, so it never even arose. But the younger generation, either party might be the one that earns more, and then the family unit is going to make a decision as to how best each person's contribution is utilized. So that constant negotiation has to keep on going on, and I think there is a little more equality for the younger generation. Certainly, I see that with my children's generation.
Okay, you bring up an interesting word, equality. Let's look at that term, equality, and let's look at that term by evaluating some examples. Would it be okay then if we are going to toe the equality line to have women propose to men in marriage? And now, Dr. McDougall, you are smiling. If we're going to want things equal, right? And also, it appears to me that maybe some women may be a little bit turned off when they are being courted by men who want to go Dutch at a restaurant. So if we are going to toe the equality line, shouldn't we make sure it's all across the board? And let's invite women to also do what men are doing. And of course, let's invite men to do what women are traditionally are doing. Dr. McDougall, go for it.
This is why I absolutely love these conversations, and particularly your questions. I love them. But I want to be clear that this is not. I'm not saying that, because I think that would be the same problem from the opposite direction. You know, so I really don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with the model of like where, okay, the man is agreed to be the provider, protector, and women agree to be nurturer, or the complete opposite. You know, like what I don't want to say it's the complete opposite, but what Dr. Easterling just articulated. To me, I think the most important part is that ability to self-define, you know, and to have a complementary relationship the way you see fit, whatever that is, as long as you're not causing anybody else any harm. So I agree with, both of those things, but I the only thing I resist is imposing a like single model on everybody, you know. So I believe both should be able to exist, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The problem is this, though. If you create a situation where, all right, if there's this kind of like notion of what the man is supposed to be, you get a situation like this. You take Black males in some places where they've been systematically excluded from the middle and upper income labor market, systematically, because of their race and gender, who they are. Mm-hmm. And then now they don't feel that they can be fathers or men, because they have associated so strongly with the provider role. that now they don't feel that they have the right to be married or be in a family or to be involved. And sometimes, not all the time, sometimes they will self-exclude themselves from family because they've been given this definition that this is what you're supposed to be. If you're not this, you're not a man, you're not a father. You know, that's the consequences of having that, of imposing that one model. You know what I mean? I want to point to a study by Brittany Letique. Okay, Brittany Letique is African-American men rearing children. It's called African-American Men Rearing Children in Violent Neighborhoods. Now, when she asked these men what they associate fatherhood with, they mentioned providing, they mentioned nurturing, they mentioned protecting, but they also mentioned emotionality. Now, did that look the same as the sameness issue? Is that that's the hang up, I think, because for the nurturing for the fathers doesn't look the same as it does for the mothers. You know what I mean? But do they associate it with their father? Absolutely. You know. But yeah, and I once again thank you for the question.
Yeah, and thanks for answering, even though you didn't answer the question directly, because I want to know if you, I guess you did answer. Basically, you're saying you don't want to pin down men for being responsible for proposing. So in other words, you are open to seeing situations where women go down on their knees and say, will you marry me as well?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. I am not. I'm not.
Okay.
I prefer it. I prefer to do what I did, you know, to go on one knee and propose. That is my preference. Now, if I read some newspaper article about some society that popped up and they said that we have this new tradition and women, I would have to. I would give it the respect. I would give it respect and take a look now. But if you're asking me, my personal, no. You know.
All right. Let's go to Dr. E. You want to chime in before we bring in the Madam? What was it?
I think that what is not really getting across in this conversation, that is the most key part of this conversation, is communication. So you brought up a very Christian practice of getting down on one knee and proposing. Number one, so you brought that up. But if I have communicated with my partner that is not something that I value, and she has communicated to me that you're right, I don't value that either. We can do it our own way. That we have now started to engage in that process, that is all important process for any type of coupling or any type of family maintenance, which is communication. Communicate to me how you see. And if we can connect, because we've now communicated what our desires are and how we see ourselves, then we can move forward as a unit. Now, in the process of us communicating, we find that we are at odds about certain things, and we can't come to a point where we agree, then developing a family between us might not be the best part. But again, what we communicate to each other, I think, is key. Because getting down on my knee is not something that I ever valued, nor did my partner. So that was not a part of our conversation. And this is not something that ever comes up in conversation. You remember when you didn't go down on your knee? Oh, because that's not something we value culturally. So that's basically it. If I don't value that, then what do I value? And if we can communicate with each other and get to the bottom of what we value and move forward in that respect, then I think that is most important.
I think what I'm hearing you say is in order to have strong family units, to build thriving families, there needs to be communication. That's what I'm hearing you say. And indeed, I mean, the idea of kneeling, the man kneeling and proposing to the woman, it's actually it's not African, even though some Africans may practice it now.
Sure.
I don't see anything wrong with it per se. You know, it's just a way of, for different cultures to
right,
you know, to initiate marriages. I mean, in the African context, and perhaps Madam Mwabeze can touch upon this. I mean, I think the men still initiate it, right? They may not go down on their knees, but the idea is that men still, you know, say, hey, I think I want to go ahead and do this with you. So that's really what I'm heading at, you know. And you know, like in the Igbo culture, the man will go to the man's family will go to the woman's family and meet with the man, you know, the parents of the man, and there's a lot that goes on with it. And but anyway, Madam Mwabeze, do you want to comment at this point, if you may?
Thanks very much indeed. Again, I speak as an Igbo, and the Igbo may not go down on his knees, but he certainly comes begging, and he doesn't come alone. He must come with his family to show who he is. He doesn't come empty-handed. He must come prepared to show the family where he wants to take away a daughter, that he is able to make provision for that member of the family who is going to leave them. The Igbos go further than that. They actually want compensation. So depending on what part of Igbo land you come from, if you're from Umbise, well, and depending on how well educated your daughter is, it isn't for the faint-hearted to want to marry an Igbo woman. So that is really what this going on one's knee means. In my culture, it's marriage is seen as a merging of families, and there's respect amongst the families. You come and ask for someone to leave her own family, a bit like Rachel and Naomi. They leave and then they go to another family. So there has to be trust, there has to be respect, there has to be communication, and there has to be assurance that that human that moves from point A to point B is not going to suffer as a consequence, nor with the great hole that is made by her departure not be ameliorated. So I think that's going down on a bended knee, albeit in a different way.
And so do you think then we should be raising boys differently than the way we raise women in the family structure? And after that, I like to segue into some other aspects of thriving. Should we be raising men differently than women? We can go to McDougall.
What do you mean by different?
Should we? So Madam Mwabeze just brought up a point that the man goes begging, and the family of the woman gives assurances, needs assurances that the family of the man can provide, can make sure they take care of the woman and so on and so forth. So does that mean that the men should be raised differently than women because of how they have to then go begging? In other words, what it seems to be happening today is we are sitting at a cusp of a cultural clash, so to speak. So there's some traditional expectations that we've inherited in this modern age, and we are trying to balance it. And so I want us to sort of address that clash that is happening. That's why I'm asking the question again: should we then be raising men differently? I give you another example. In the Igbo culture, there's something that men do, young men do. They wrestle. If you have read Tino Achebe, it opens up with the scenario where the Okonkwo was wrestling, right? And he won several. So this is an expectation. There's a meaning behind that, the physicality of a man. So you are raising the man to be a certain way than you raise a woman. In things fall apart, right? So I'm asking, should we be raising boys differently than the way we raise girls in this day and age?
Yeah, I want to answer that, but I want to yield to Madam Nwabeze, because I think I heard you start to say something earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I wanted to say that, as other speakers have said, marriage is it's a contract between families and two people. It's based on mutual respect, the ability to communicate, and being able to complement each other in order that the family, nuclear and extended, continue to flourish. So insofar as whether men and women should be raised differently, from my own experience, definitely girls were brought up in a different way. My mother would, and her family, they believe that in my dialect, you know how to run a home, cook, and make sure that you are able to function as a housekeeper, a cook, all those sorts of things. And then I remember during the war, the Civil War, the Biafran War, in the late 60s, and it ended in 1970. My brothers didn't share cooking chores with us, but they swept the outside of the compound. They helped build a house for my grown-up cousin in the traditional way, although we all did that too. But there were certain roles that were designated for boys. And certainly the girls ourselves, we were not encouraged to go out of the house. All our activities were within the house. But things have changed now, and bringing up a boy child now, I would have thought would be on the basis of ensuring that the child has integrity, is hardworking, knows how to nurture and respect. These are the values I would want for any kind of child.
Yeah, I would just second that. I don't think I could say it any better than that. I definitely agree that that's the fundamental key, like the values, the nurturing of the values. But I don't believe in sameness, or equating sameness with our freedom or our liberty. We are different, and this is my belief. I'm not trying to impose it on anybody else or anything like that, but
no, we are. I agree.
I believe we're different, and not just by nurture, our socialization, but just, I mean, even our biology, our chemistry, our brains. And I think that is should reflect that, yes, I mean, we should be treated differently. I mean, not just based on our gender, but I mean, even Paul tell you, individual children are different too. So even at that level. So yeah, I do believe that in that difference, as long as it doesn't exclude one another from opportunities and growth and stuff like that. But yeah.
There's a research, I don't remember who did the study, but basically show that when men are more open to emotional connectivity, that the marriages tend to last longer. When the men open up a little bit more, I think it ties well with what Dr. E mentioned earlier, saying that communication is important. So that research basically goes a little further by saying not just is it important that you communicate, men need to be more emotionally available. And when that happens, the relationship lasts longer. I would like to ask the panel if there are other ingredients. So besides communication, emotional connectivity, are there other factors that you think would help bring about a thriving family? Dr. E, if you have anything, you can chime in. Otherwise, anybody can answer that question. Besides communication, besides emotional availability in this modern age, because we are really dealing with a clash. So, Madam Nwabweze, go ahead.
I believe that being able to be quite flexible, pliant, forgiving, it's very, very important because, marriage is two different people brought up differently. They are human beings in their own right. And you've got to respect each other's space. You really must do that. And one should not become dependent on the other to the extent that it begins to be weary or uncomfortable. You've got to have a sense of your own self apart from being part of a couple. I think
Dr. E.
As far as roles and how we teach each generation, I make sure that that everybody knows similar things. Like, I believe daughters should learn how to fight. As well, I believe sons should learn how to cook. Right? There's certain when I was out in the world like that, there's only one thing that a woman can do that I can't do, and that's have a baby. I can cook for myself. I can do whatever I got to do for my clothes, and I can do all these things because I don't need a woman for anything besides that coupling or that whatever desires I may have. And that has always served me well. So I was never dependent on a woman. And likewise, I don't want a woman to be dependent on me. Should be equally yoked in this process, or in the process of developing a family. And so we can be as flexible as possible if we do have to switch gender roles, because life is unpredictable, right? So I don't know if somehow down the road something happens to someone in the family and we have to switch gender roles because you have an opportunity that I don't, and I may need to sit back at home for a little while. And I need to be okay with that because this is a family, right? And I can't be static in how I see myself, so static that I'm inflexible and unable to assume another role. To me, that your inability to serve another role in the family is actually a sign of weakness. In my view, you should be very flexible. You should be very adept at everything that needs to go on inside of a house, except the obvious, because I can't have kids, right? So everything else, though, I'm right there. What you got? I can do it just as good, if not better. And that's how I teach my kids. But my boys will learn how to cook, and my girls will learn how to fight. So there's not one dependent on the other. We work together as a family, and to me, that's what family is about.
You make a very good point. Very interesting. I'll bet, Dr. E. The idea of teaching girls how to fight and making sure men can also cook is an interesting concept in psychology, because if you are going to help an introvert, for example, become better in life, in their profession, what you want to do is help them become a little bit more extroverted. You give them the opposite, so you strengthen their emotional or their psychological capacity by so doing. And likewise, if you want to help the extroverts, you teach them how to shut up sometimes and just be quiet and observe a little bit,
right,
and listen.
Right.
So the idea of giving the other person a dose of what they don't have and shoring up their weaknesses, I think is a good lesson. Now you talked about the idea of now, but there is a caveat though. There's a caveat, right? Because you talked about communication earlier, but then it's also important, I think, for families to think about what is practical. Let's say, for example, let's say the woman is the breadwinner, since we are being equal, right, on this platform. If the woman is the breadwinner, right, and she's making her time outside, right, home is $1,000 per hour, right? And you are trying to save up money. You want to make sure you have a plan for the family to make money for a certain project. It may not be wise to have her cooking, right? Because her time is worth more. I mean, I'm just thinking in practical terms.
Right.
Likewise,
no, yeah.
Right. If the man's time is worth more and you have plans to maybe do X, Y, Z, it may not be wise to have him in the kitchen cooking and all that stuff. So I think, again, it goes back to the idea of communication. Yeah. Understand who you are marrying, who you are with, figure out the goals of the family, and then if there is love, that's why I love the term being flexible and pliable. If there is love, then you make it happen, you make it work. Because right. in the Igbo, in my village, we say no. It means a bird is not wicked in his nest or in her nest. Exactly. Right? Mm-hmm. Right. So if it's your nest, you're not wicked in your nest. You want to bring love and kindness. It's your nest. You tend to it. You do what's necessary to make people in your nest thrive. So I love this conversation. Dr. McDougall, I think we haven't called you in a while here. You want to chime in here before we start wrapping up?
No, I think these are great points, and I think these are at the heart of the issue. These particular skills like negotiation, healthy emotional expression, conflict resolution skills. I would add though financial awareness or financial literacy management, however you want to call it, because I think those are the things that can sometimes get in the way of people and the healthy relationships that they want. I mean, I'm not a big into pushing people to get married, but I know that a lot of the reasons that they don't do it is because they don't necessarily have those particular skills. So I think that those are the things that we should emphasize and kind of just promote that. And other things, I don't want to say other things will just fall into place, but that'll be a major first step. But I mean, just listening to this conversation, we're talking about different approaches and different styles. I think one of the things we can do is study different family models across the African world so that we can see and look like they take that difference. We're talking about difference at the individual level. There's difference at the cultural level within the African world. So we can appreciate those different branches on the tree of Pan-African world.
I like that, Dr. McDougall. Madam Mwabweze, do you have anything to share before we close? Last words?
Well, the good doctor just spoke like a matrimonial lawyer. Those skills are really quite important. You've got to be financially literate. You should understand negotiation, and you have to have conflict resolution skills. Marriage is the greatest contract of all. And there are conditions of the contract, which parties should, I'm being very dry now. I'm looking at it from a matrimonial lawyer's angle. But if partners in an agreement understand what that agreement is, and they are constantly working to ensure that there is not a breach. And if there is a breach, they are able to overcome the full power. And the way to do that is to be to treat each other with tender loving kindness, even when you're not speaking to each other or when you hate each other. You know that this person, yeah, you do love them anyway, but not now, but you do love them.
Thank you so much. That is a good place to
That's a good one.
end. We're going to continue this conversation next week. We will invite Madam Nina Orji from Abuja, who does coaching. She coaches women on how to make a home. So we want to figure out, okay, what she's doing there and how she does it and how it's working out for her. And I believe she's also going to invite her husband to be on the panel with us. So I would like to have you all back next week, if you may, so we can hear Nina out and maybe contribute. I have a few more things I'd like to say, especially when I heard Dr. McDougall talk about studying the different approaches, because the way I grew up is not the way I'm raising my kids, for example. So we need to, I want to share more about that. So next week, tune in and we'll continue this discussion on building thriving families. It's been a fantastic discussion. Thank you to Professor Cyril McDougall. Thank you to Dr. Paul Easterling. And of course, thank you to Madam Mwabweze. Until then, Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.